with the Lord's blessing. So, having said that, tonight, it's me. We're going to have communion tonight also. I'll be reading in 2 Samuel chapter 6. And if you guys want to find that, I'll get started here. But also we're going to be in Psalm 51, which you don't have to turn to, but I'm going to read it, and Leviticus 10. These are some examples that I'm using. The title of this message is The Heart for Worship. So I had heard this several years ago. I think I've heard it a couple times in my Christian walk, but I wanted to share that with you, share this message with you, because it impacted my life. So once again, 2 Samuel chapter 6 is where we'll be doing our first reading, or actually I'll be reading Psalm 51 first. For references, I use Christian Bible Studies. You Google it online and you get a ton of information, okay? I use Warren Wiersbe's information also, and the New King James for scriptures, okay? So, the heart of worship. When I was young, my grandfather came out to visit us from Missouri, and I will have to say that in a short period of time that he came to visit, he impacted my life. And my grandfather was a minister, and he preached the gospel. He preached hellfire and brimstone. And one of the pictures I have of him shows him like this. It's like, so he's getting down to business, to brass tacks. But he was also he played guitar, and he was known as a singing preacher. And he would travel from place to place, and he's responsible for starting a lot of churches. So he was a big influence in my life. Obviously, here I am with the opportunity to lead worship here, and it's truly a blessing. But it's also it's a daunting task at times, because there's a lot of thought that needs to go into it, and we'll find out here in Scripture. So another person in my life that has been, instrumental in my Christian walk has been, it's been David. And, Psalm or 2 Samuel 6, which we're going to be getting into, it talks about the ark being brought back. David having this desire to bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. So, once again, I feel fortunate to have witnessed the passion that my grandfather had for God and for worship, and to watch how he interacted with people and how he lived his life. It has truly impacted my life. Also, like I mentioned, David in the Scriptures, David has been called a man after God's own heart, not because he did everything right, but because he lived a lifestyle of worship. David loved to worship. David wrote 73 of the Psalms. David would write psalms when rejoicing, and also psalms of sadness when in trouble. He wrote of God's faithfulness and love. He cried out to God for comfort during times of personal pain. David knew that true worship, it can't be limited to singing praise songs. It will always move from our lips to our lifestyle. We grow and change. As believers, we cannot all have the same lifestyle that David had. Though in Romans 12:1, Paul writes, "Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. That is your spiritual act of worship." True worship is defined by the priority we place on who God is in our lives and where God is on our list of priorities. True worship manifests itself in actions and comes from the heart of God. David's life reveals 5 elements that characterize a lifestyle of worship. Number 1 is confidence in God. He faced Goliath without fear, and he fought a lion and a bear, and God delivered him. So he had that confidence, knowing going into a situation that God was there for him. Number 2, he had a submissive spirit. He could have killed Saul twice, but he would rather leave judgment to God. He honored Saul's position with God. Courageous faith is number 3. Faith is grounded in hope. David lost a child, but proclaimed he would see him again. He believed God was good, loving, and gracious. Raw passion for God. When the ark was brought into Jerusalem, David danced, not caring what others thought. It was personal and unto the Lord. A lifestyle of worship emanates from a contrite heart. Number 5. David sinned with Bathsheba. He wrote of the account in Psalms 51. So I'm going to read Psalms 51 to you real quick here. It's to the chief musician, a psalm of David when Nathan the prophet went to him after he had gone in to Bathsheba. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to your loving kindness, according to the multitude of your tender mercies. Blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. Against you, you only have I sinned, and done this evil in your sight, that you may be found just when you speak, and blameless when you judge. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. Behold, you desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you will make me known, make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me hear joy and gladness, that the bones you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my iniquities. This is my favorite, one of my favorite verses. It's create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and upon me by your generous spirit. Then I will teach transgressors the way, and sinners shall be converted to you. Deliver me from guilt of bloodshed, O God, the God of my salvation, and my tongue shall sing aloud to your righteousness. O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall show forth your praise. For you do not desire sacrifice, or else I would give it. You do not delight in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit and a broken and contrite heart. These, O God, you will not despise. Do good in your good pleasure to Zion, and build the walls of Jerusalem. Then you shall be pleased with the sacrifices of righteousness, with burnt offerings and the whole burnt offerings, and they shall offer bulls on your altar. There's 3 main parts to this that I just wanted to mention. The first, verse 1 through 7 is, it's cleanse me, God. He speaks of being cleansed. The second is 8 through 12, and it's restore me. And then the last would be 13 to 19, use me. So there was a progression there for David, you know. He needed to be cleaned, and then he was restored, and then he was able to be used. So that's how we want to be. We want to be able to be used. So now we'll look at 2 Samuel here. If I can find it. Okay. All right. So this is an account of David bringing the ark back to Jerusalem. Again, David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal, Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, whose name is called by the name the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. So they set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drove the new cart, and they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, accompanying the ark of God. And Ahio went before the ark. Then David and all the house of Israel played music before the Lord, and on all kinds of instruments of fir wood, on harps, on stringed instruments and tambourines, sistrums and cymbals. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put his hand out to the ark and of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died there by the ark of God. And David became angry because the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day. Actually, I think in layman's terms what that means is Uzzah was struck by God there. Okay, so David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" So David would not move the ark of the Lord with him into the city of David, but David took it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom and the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Now it was told King David, saying, "The Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God." Also at this time I want to mention that David had completed erecting the shelter that was going to be used to house the ark. So at this time then, when David was told this, so David went and he brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with gladness. And so it was, when those bearing the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, that he sacrificed oxen and fatted sheep. Then David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. Now as the ark of the Lord, we'll leave off there on this. Now, so they're describing David's attempt at bringing back the ark to its rightful place. The first attempt was unsuccessful in part because the people failed to acknowledge the holiness of God. So they were treating the ark as if it were another piece of furniture instead of something God had proclaimed sacred. They transported it on a new cart. So you see some sense of reverence, but they were still out of order. There was an order of things for the ark specifically called out by the Lord to Moses, and how this was to be transported and carried. So it wasn't a proper method as prescribed. When the cart shifted and the ark moved, Uzzah reached out to steady it. God struck him and he was dead. Again, a sign of disrespect, as this wasn't proper. So they left the ark, and it blessed the place where it was staying. When David was told, David retrieved the ark in the proper manner, using stays or poles that went through these rings that they had set up for porters to carry the ark. And after 6 steps, it said that they sacrificed unto the Lord, and the children of Israel were blessed. This was a big procession. If you let's see. I think it's 1 Chronicles 13, 1 through 14 is another description of this goings on. And they talked about all the people came for this event. So I had mentioned 30,000 strong men of David went out with David to bring back the ark. Well, there was a lot of people involved with this also, not just the army, but that was besides that. So proper recognition of God's holiness was demonstrated at that time, and they were successful. I want to read another portion to you. This is from Leviticus 10, and it's another situation where God had to move because things were out of order. Profane fire of Nadab and Abihu. Then Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire on it and put incense on it and offered profane fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. So fire went out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. And Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people, I must be glorified." So Aaron, who was the father of Nadab and Abihu, he held his peace in regard to their deaths. Fundamental contrast of the Old Testament worship versus Christian worship today. Old Testament worship was largely tied to the physical, the tabernacle or the temple, and the altar, the Ark of the Covenant. All those things that were symbols. When you go through the Old Testament and it talks about all of the instruments that were implemented in sacrificing to the Lord. It's pretty lengthy on each item and how worship was to be presented to God. So what does worship mean? There are several definitions of the word, but one in particular sums up the priority we should give to worship as a spiritual discipline. Worship is to honor with extravagant love and extreme submission. That's the definition of Webster's Dictionary, 1828. True worship is defined by the priority we place on who God is in our lives and where God is in our list of priorities. True worship is a matter of the heart, expressed through a lifestyle of holiness. So in your lifestyle, if your lifestyle does not express beauty of holiness through the extravagant or exaggerated love of God, and you do not live in extreme or excessive submission to God, then I invite you to make worship a priority in your life. So when we sing, we should be acknowledging God, desiring to be in His presence, humbling ourselves before Him, praising and worshiping and fearing or reverencing Him. Examination of our relationship with God. Draw me closer to you, Lord. Forgive me for my sins. Opening our heart to change. Lord, you take control and lead me by your word. Guide me and direct. At this time, I'd like to ask Sam to come on back up, and we're going to have communion tonight, but I'm going to sum this up for you here. The promise of worship, because of our God's unimaginable generosity towards us, God in all His glory chooses to respond to us through our worship. This is the promise that when we worship God with extravagant love and extreme submission, God will come and commune with us. The promise is not that we feel great or that our heavy load will be lifted, but that God will come. Despite all those other things, God will come. And when God comes in his own time, as a response to our worship, he declares, "Let all creation rejoice before the Lord. For he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and all the peoples in faithfulness." In other words, when we worship God, God will inspect our hearts first. The other benefits that we tend to expect because we lift our hands or we shout with our voices, they're worthless if our hearts aren't in the right place with God. When we offer true worship, we're inviting God to inspect our hearts for anything that is not like him. Let us evaluate our expressions of worship so that through singing, declaring, and giving, we will give to the Lord the glory he deserves. The promise is that when we worship God this way, he will come and commune with us. And above all, God will respond to your worship by making your heart more like his. So at this time, we'd like to have the ushers come forward with the elements. And Sam's going to lead us in a worship song here. Amen. God is good.
Hi everybody, Pastor Greg, Calvary Chapel, Jurupa Valley. Hey, we're so glad that you've been enjoying the videos, and we just know that God has been touching you and just giving you a blessing through these teachings. But you know, we'd like to give you a challenge. Since this material is available, as you know, you can go to the website and pull these videos down, but we would like to challenge you. Since you're enjoying these teachings on a regular basis, we want to challenge you, why not share these videos? You've got lots of friends on Facebook and so forth, and social media. Why not inject the gospel message, the Bible teachings of the Lord into your share partners? It would be a great opportunity to maybe start a conversation, but we would really like you to be encouraged and consider passing these teachings on. We want people to be benefited, so let's allow the Lord to do what he would like to do. But in the meantime, we're so glad that you've been joining us and enjoying these teachings. They will continue to come as the Lord tarries. But again, enjoy the Lord. Thank you so much, and continue to pray for Calvary Chapel here in the city of Jurupa Valley. God bless you, Pastor Greg, once again, and we'll catch up with you next time. Have a great week in the Lord. Bye now. Okay.